The icy wind howled through the streets of Washington, D.C., but inside the United States Secret Service headquarters, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Agents moved with precision, eyes fixed on security monitors, hushed conversations passing between them like code in a high-stakes chess game. It was business as usual, until the heavy doors at the entrance swung open. Donald Trump stepped inside. No prior notice. No grand entrance. No security escort. Just his unmistakable presence. The air in the room shifted, conversation screeched to a halt, and all eyes turned to him. His gaze, sharp as a hawk's, swept across the room as he walked with steady purpose. A seasoned agent finally found his voice. "Mr. Trump, what brings you here?" Trump's expression was unreadable, but his voice was firm, carrying the weight of a man with unfinished business. "I'm looking for someone," he said. "An agent who saved my life years ago. But his name, his entire existence, has been erased from the records." Murmurs rippled through the room. Agents exchanged confused glances. Someone had saved Donald Trump's life, and yet there was no record of it? Jonathan Marks, the director of the Secret Service, stepped forward. A man who had served under multiple administrations, he was not easily shaken. But even he couldn't mask the intrigue in his voice. "You're saying a Secret Service agent saved your life?" Trump nodded, his eyes distant, recalling a night that had haunted him for decades. "It was 1982. I was a young businessman back then, expanding my empire. Success was my only focus. Skyscrapers, million-dollar deals. I never imagined that one night I would stand face to face with death." The agents leaned in, a tale from decades past, now unraveling in real time. New York City, 1982. A crisp autumn night in Manhattan. Trump, younger but just as commanding, stepped out of a towering hotel, heading toward his car. He was deep in thought, unaware that danger lurked in the shadows. As he turned into a side street, an SUV screeched to a halt in front of him. Before he could react, 4 men emerged, armed and determined. Trump barely had time to process what was happening before a pair of rough hands yanked him from his car and shoved him against a wall. "You think you can walk into our world without consequences?" one of the men sneered, pressing the cold steel of a gun to Trump's temple. Then a voice, steady, authoritative, rang out from the darkness. "Drop your weapons. You have one warning." The armed men hesitated. One of them scoffed, tightening his grip on the trigger. A single gunshot sliced through the night. One of the attackers howled in pain, his weapon clattering to the ground. Before the others could react, a figure emerged, a lone agent moving with precision, outnumbered but undeterred. Chaos erupted. The assailants fired wildly, but the agent anticipated every move. Within seconds, 2 more men were incapacitated. The last one, realizing he was outmatched, took off running. Trump, shaken but intact, turned to his rescuer. The agent, breathing heavily, looked at him just long enough for Trump to notice a deep scar running along his left hand. "Who are you?" Trump asked. The agent met his gaze, then said just one word: "Shadow." And then, as quickly as he had appeared, he vanished into the night. The room was silent. Trump exhaled, his hands tightening into fists. "I never saw him again. The next day I tried to find out who he was, but there was no record, no name, as if he had never existed." Marks turned to one of his agents. "Pull all classified records from deep cover operations in the 80s. Cross-check every alias, every erased file." The agent's fingers flew across the keyboard. Moments later, he shook his head. Nothing. No one under the alias Shadow. If he existed, someone wanted him erased. Trump's jaw clenched. Then we find him. 3 days later, in the frozen wilderness outside Chicago, Trump and Marks stood before a small, secluded cabin. The air was thick with tension. Marks rapped on the door. No response. Trump took a step forward. "Shadow, I know you're in there." Silence. Then, the faint sound of a latch unlocking. The door creaked open just enough for a pair of piercing eyes to be visible. David Cole, once known as Shadow. He looked older, wearier, but those same battle-hardened eyes remained unchanged. He studied Trump for a long moment before speaking. "If you've come this far," he said, voice rough from years of silence, "then you're ready for the truth." Inside, the dim glow of a lantern cast long shadows on the walls. Stacks of old documents and faded photographs littered the table. Trump's gaze landed on an old, yellowed photograph of agents standing in formation. But one man stood apart, his face half-turned, his stance always watching. Trump pointed. "That's you." Cole nodded. "That was before they erased me." Marks leaned in. "Why were you erased?" Cole exhaled. "Because I got too close to the truth. I infiltrated a criminal syndicate tied to people in high places. When I was ready to expose them, they made sure I disappeared." Trump tightened his grip on the edge of the table. "I can fix this. I can bring your name back." Cole studied him. "You do this. You're painting a target on your back." Trump didn't flinch. "I'm not afraid." Cole hesitated, then reached into a cabinet, pulling out a small metal box. He set it on the table. "Inside is everything I've held on to for 40 years. If you're serious about this, take it." Trump opened the box. Documents, audio recordings, photographic proof of a cover-up so deep it had cost Cole his very identity. Marks scanned the files, his face darkening. "If this gets out, it changes everything." Trump nodded. "Then we do it." 4 days later, the world watched as Trump stood before a podium outside the Secret Service headquarters. Cameras flashed. The nation held its breath. Today, I tell the story of a man America should never have forgotten. A man who sacrificed everything for justice, only to be erased from history. The crowd was silent. Trump turned to Cole. "You were forced into the shadows, but today, the world will remember your name." As Cole stepped forward, a weight lifted from his shoulders. After decades of silence, justice had finally found its way back to him, and history would never forget it again.